Can you share, Sabrina, will you share with me the link to our YouTube where we're posting these things at?
Yeah, it's pinned in our Slack channel, but I got you.
Yeah, you're like super far away. Like I can barely hear you. It sounds like you're way far away from your microphone.
How do I sound?
Very quiet. We'll give everyone a sec to filter in here, and then we'll start answering questions. You have one pre-submitted question. Yeah, just so everyone knows, we are posting all of our recordings on our YouTube channel here under decision support. So this is where you'll be able to find previous recordings from the Monday through Thursday lunch and learns. And Sabrina, if you can drop, never mind, you did, sorry. Let's get myself set up here. All right. So, hey, welcome, Harry. If you'd like, I can just read your question out. It looks like you, Sabrina, posted in the chat. We can also, if you'd like to unmute and just talk about your question here in more detail, I'm happy to do that as well, my friend. For everyone, let me just find. If I had a question, it would be around user security model within decisions, and if there are any plans to expand on what's available at the moment, therefore allowing decisions to be used by a wider audience within a company as a presentation and discussion tool. Can you help me understand a little bit more what you're asking there, Harry, if possible?
Yeah, essentially, what it is that we're in the process of altering some of our flows with some fairly complex, I think, rules and rule chains, and I think that they're quite complex for us to maintain. So what I'm doing is simplifying them basically and making them into straightforward flows. And what came about is one of the issues is trying to actually convey to other departments, particularly underwriting and our actuarial department, as to what the rules are and how they interact with the other application processes as such. So what was really quite obvious is that that actually having simple linear flows visible to them, we can actually just talk our way through it, which is fine. But what I'd like to be able to do is actually open those specific flows out to a wider audience so that they can actually just log into decisions and view these flows and discuss it in their meetings without us actually having to sort of kind of babysit them through it effectively.
Understood.
Yeah, what we don't want is, of course, everybody to be able to just go in there and start messing about with these flows for rather obvious reasons. So that's where it came about. Is it possible to actually just be able to allow somebody to log into decisions and view a flow, literally just view a flow, read only, not to be able to edit it? To actually be able to, even present a solution or a business process to a wider audience at a meeting, it's a really, really nice tool to be able to do that. It's a logical tool to use actually to do that, given what it does and how you use it. But again, actually looking at raw live flows in that scenario is not the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you wouldn't want to give someone the ability to edit something.
Yeah, we also don't have any.
I
don't think there's any functionality to be able to, like print stuff out or get effectively, large PDFs of a flow that are easily manageable either. So the logical thing is just to use the flow itself.
Yeah, I think there's two great ideas. I mean, the idea of being able to just get some sort of printout of your flow is actually really reasonable, and something that we should have the ability to do. We have had a couple requests from customers for like a read-only designer, a read-only studio, and that is in the feature request cube. It's something we're not exploring with any urgency for sure, but it's definitely something that we've had a few requests for, and just to be able to click through and review.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So other people are asking the same thing, that's for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's something that at the moment the conversations are between us and other departments, but I really want those other departments to be able to go away and have their own discussions. We don't need to be involved with that. So yeah.
Yeah, one thing we do have, and it probably doesn't meet the need, but it's just interesting, is we have this create project documentation action, which shows up under import export. And I got a project here called branching stuff where I'm troubleshooting an issue. And if I click this, it's going to, let me try just for the folder then. Maybe there's an issue. Yeah, it'll actually give me an HTML file. It'll generate this HTML, which will walk through all of the flows, not in a directly, like it won't let you go through each one, but this will be, right now, this is a list of all of the flows that are in, or really all of the element registration objects that are in that folder. And so it'll tell you the steps with their inputs, input information, and give you sort of the view. So I think you could probably, this might be a bit of a halfway solution to your question, is the project documentation action.
Yeah, it just depends on what happens. Most of our flows are wider and deeper than a page. It looks as though all those flows are quite small. So yeah, effectively they're screen grabs. But actually, as documentation for input output and stuff like that for auditing purposes, that could actually be very useful to our own department, internally to our department. Yeah, that's kind of auto-generating.
Absolutely.
A lot of documentation for us, which is good. I have to admit, I spend quite a bit of time actually documenting the flow itself, so that, for example, at the input and output sections there, I would probably have text to say what the input is, and any further notes as to why and what it's been used for, that type of stuff. I'm pretty heavily into documenting that side of things, simply because I know what it's like looking at my flows 6 months later.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely important to make sure things are named and have appropriate annotations. But if you haven't seen this yet, I'd give it a shot.
Yeah, I will.
It might help out. It might be just better than nothing.
Yeah, I've not used that. I've not seen it. Yeah, not noticed it anyway. Excellent. Yeah, give that a bash.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was just on the export section, yeah?
Yeah, it's under, you should be able to, yes, it's under the import export category, and then it's create. Yeah, either folder or project documentation.
Right. Cool. Thank you.
And that'll just control the scope of the action that runs. All right, so let's see, to Josh. If I have a flow structure data type consisting of strings, how do I go outputting it into a CSV file? Okay. So you have a string property inside of your flow structure that you need to turn.
Yeah, so my flow structure is two strings.
Okay.
And then I create a list of those objects as part of my flow, and then I want to output that list into a CSV.
Understood.
So I can download or email or whatever.
So, all right, so let's create get rid of this pop-up here. Let's create a flow structure. And it'll have string 1 and string 2. All right, and then let's create a flow here. So map to CSV. Oh, CSV, good grief. And I will go ahead and use a create data step and declare, actually I'll do it on my start step. So I'll declare a list of my CSV type, or my type. So this is, input list. And here I'll find, search for or actually I named it example, didn't I? Example. I'm not sure why the type search on my local is so slow. There's example 1 and a list. All right, so the easiest way to do this is if I come under integration, Excel CSV, there should be a list to CSV mapping step here. And so let's walk.
It wasn't letting me choose the data type as the output. That was the input. I couldn't get it to be my data type, so because I'm erroring out.
Okay, let's see if we can get this to work. So we have a list of something coming in, and then we have file data called outcome file coming out. So let's map in our input list here and connect our done path. So if we come back in here, we should see after selecting input list, we get, it changes the type from string to list of example 1, which is what we want. Now that we have this, this is easier shown in 7, but there's this sort of hidden item called show item mapping editor, you'll see. And if we go into this, this is where we can build the mapping.
Okay, so 1 second, that's the back and forth step. 1 second is where I was having the issue. It was under integration, Excel and CSV.
Yep, integration, Excel CSV, list to CSV.
List to CSV mapping, okay.
And then map your input list into the inputs input.
Yeah, okay. So if I do select from flow, let me make sure I get the right one here. This is, oh, okay, now it likes it. Okay, I see, yeah, okay, I think continue on. I think I can follow the rest of the tutorial from here, online from here, but.
Yeah, then you just go into the item mapping editor and you can do build data on CSV, select, field 1, field 2. And then now that you have that, you get this special underscore input and you can should be able to map from field 1 to field 2. Maybe. Let's try that again. What's it not working? Yeah, there we go. And then that, when it runs mapped in this way, should give you a CSV file with 2 columns. And if we look at the properties here, it will be an XLS or whatever we select. And we can specify headers if we want, the row the headers start on, and then the row the data starts on, and or load in a template file.
And then how do we download it? How do we present it for? I have to make like a download form, right? To download it from.
Exactly, like a form with a download file, and then like a simple, simple decisions form with download file control.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much.
All right, so that answers your question, Josh. So hey, Ross, welcome to Lunch and Learns here. So Ross's question is, to encrypt data in the decisions database, is it as simple as checking either the encrypt data or a PII box in the data structure editor? Alternatively, if I want to keep the keys on a different server from the database, is there a way to support PKI encryption for select fields? Okay, so I think the question is, where is the encryption? What level of encryption are we talking about? And by level, I mean, is it the entire database or is it at the field level?
No, it's mostly at the field level. We have some user data, that is particularly sensitive, right? PII.
Yeah.
That we want to treat stronger than just, normal data in the system.
So just so everyone's aware, you can, Ross is asking a question about encrypting individual data fields. If I come and create a database structure here, there is a property field. So let me just call this a encryption example. And I'm going to make a string field here. And on this, there's two options. I can encrypt this, or I have select contains PII. And encrypt is the older of the two here. But encryption will, what decisions will do is decisions has a keys.dat file inside of its directory that will encrypt this field, the string field. So we can have a mix of encrypted and unencrypted fields at the database level. And the workflow engine will take care of encrypting and decrypting that string1 field automatically for you by virtue of using its keys.dat file. So your question is about keeping keys on a different.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what levels I can go to, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, because the weak link is if both if the decisions database, if the SQL database somehow gets hacked and the server gets hacked and they get the keys, then they can get. So I'm wondering if there's a way to store that data encrypted in the decisions database, and I have a decryption key that I store off of it and decrypt it separately. So I didn't know if you have any support for PKI encryption structures.
So our default encryption relies on the keys file being available on the app server, and that applies to encrypt data and contains PII.
Yeah.
Right. Now we do have like a PGP module if you wanted to sort of try to code this up yourself from a workflow perspective. There is a. I'm just sort of brainstorming out loud here just to be transparent.
PGP. Hadn't thought. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know you had a module for that. That might.
There is a PGP module that can encrypt and decrypt strings. And so theoretically, you could have a flow that has behavior to fetch a keys file from some other location and uses it. I believe you can use it at runtime. Let me install the PGP module and let's poke around here a bit. I don't know that this is the right way to do it, but it sounds like given your concern about keys file being on the application server and that being a requirement for our encryption and PII functionality to work, that you might have to explore something else.
PGP
now you can
support PKI, so
you can absolutely you can definitely encrypt the entire database itself, right?
Yeah,
and ensure
but then you have to have the key, right? That's almost. We're just trying to take extra precautions with respect to some sensitive user data that is not needed on a regular basis. It's only needed when someone would physically be present to put in a decryption key to see it.
Did that like restart? I'm
I see the PGP steps down there at the bottom.
Oh, the root. Sorry.
Yeah.
So PGP steps, we should be able to decrypt string and encrypt string.
Okay.
And the input to this is going to be the string and then the public key string. So there's no reason you couldn't have like a fetch from like a secure bucket or something else that fetches the string and passes it into the step. I mean, technically you would be exposing that to a designer to be able to capture, right? There's no way to prevent that right now.
Right, but what we could do is take the encryption could be done using the public key, and the designer could have that. And then on decrypt, it could just say, okay, enter the decryption key in a form and decrypt it at runtime and display the information.
Right, yep.
And then the user would actually just cut and paste in the decryption key.
Yeah, sure. That absolutely. Yes. Yeah, that could work. Yeah, you could even, yeah.
Is keys.dat is your default encryption? Is that, well, I'm assuming is that symmetrical, I guess, because you only needed one key. Because I'm wondering what would happen if I used PKI to store the value in the database and encrypted it using yours as well. It would be an encryption of an encryption.
Oh, okay.
I don't know enough about an encryption to know if that messes anything up, but in theory, it's just data.
Yeah. That sounds like it should work, right? Since it is just a string, but getting, encrypted again. So as long as the order of events were correct, that sounds correct. But I'd have to do some exploration, give you a concrete answer on that.
No, but I didn't know about the PGP module. That actually is exactly what I was looking for. So I should be able to use that.
And also one of the things we've added, I bet I can't find it. And I'm curious if we even have this documented, is we did add the support for rolling keys files with PII. Let's see, PII fields on data structures is inside of data structures, PII. There is yeah, we could use some more love there. Where is, there's a role key thing here.
Yeah, but again, keeping the keys on the same server as
no,
understand.
understand.
It's not my preferred implementation.
No, yeah, understood. I'm just trying to think now that we're talking about PI, just to help everyone else understand some more about it. Just two seconds, actually. One moment.
Related issue, and feel free to punt this one to support because I've already reached out to them. I checked the PII box on an existing data structure that had data in it. And I thought it would just switch it over to an encrypted field, but I got an error message or email that said it couldn't migrate the data in that field. And so it created a new structure and put my backup somewhere else. Is that normal or?
It is, yep. Were you able to get the data back out?
Well, I haven't tried because it scared me. I unchecked the box and then resaved the data structure. So now I don't know.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so let me create an entity here, since it'll be easy, and I'll say, so what Ross is asking about is we call them like shadow table. And I'm going to create a date. I'm going to create a string field. Should I do a date? I'm going to create a date field. I'm going to do date. So I'll just go test date field. And make this date time. No, this needs to be a string. I'm going to convert let me try a string. I'll just.
Yeah, I just use strings and integers, I think, or everything that I'm strings for the most part.
And let me add some data to my table here. So I need to show add action and refresh once that comes through. All right, and I'm going to add some shadow table data, and this will be called entity 1, and the string will be ASDF. So now if I come back and I edit, so what we do is to prevent you, because we know if we have a database persistent type, we have to both create a C# object, but we also have to make edits to the database table. And then there's a relationship between the type of the property and then like the schema change to the table. And so the shadow tables are meant to preserve your data in case you make a quote unquote dangerous change, right? And maybe your example shouldn't have been included if it was about encryption, but changing a data type, we should be able to force this. So if I edit this and I change this to an integer, my string1 field to an integer, and I save this, it should give me a pop-up that tells me it moved my data, or actually I think it's an error message, isn't it?
Yeah, what I did is I had checked the box
there it is.
for PII. when
Yep.
it threw me that, and it sent me an email as administrator.
Right. It also gives you this pop-up here. And
Yeah.
here we can see that table my apps LNL encryption shadow table has been updated. And this is a task that got assigned to me. And it says we are unable to migrate the data in column str1 from into the new structure. And so what we get when this happens is this thing called at least I refer to as a shadow table. So if I come and find that table, which is my apps something, my apps, my space apps. Lord, let me just find it. Sorry. So what's my table name here? Table name is this guy right here. Go back to my query editor. This is being a pain. There we go. What I now have is my original table here. And then I have a table with the same name _old and the date stamp of when the compile event occurred. And if I look at both of these, so let me just select star from and select star from and steal this table name. Where is it at? Generate update, insert table name. If I run both of these, on my first one, you'll notice I have my row here, but my field str1 is empty. And if I look at query 2, it's only going to have 2 fields, the primary key of the row from the first table and then the original value of str1. So we create this shadow table for you in case there's a dangerous change. And then it's up to you to do the query, the SQL sort of work to, if this was the right change, or you need to, you need to convert ASDF to some integer. You can then use, you could use a workflow engine for this, but really you need to go and manually manage the reinsert of this data from the old table into the previous or the original table. So that's what that alert was telling you, is that we can't convert there's a value in here we can't convert to the change. So we've created a new table and moved all of the existing data from that column into a shadow table with the primary key as well as those values, so that you can't lose data at all, and you can remediate that change manually. Does that help you understand what was going on there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I really was just curious, like when I checked PII and it threw me that error, if I guess because it created a new data field to store the encrypted data in from the old stuff, so it can't just move it, it has to encrypt it first.
I mean, it should have been able to encrypt it. I think that might have been that might be, the shadow table behavior, quote unquote, might not be respecting like the PII flag appropriately, right? That sounds like it could be like a bug and not expected behavior. But either way,
it says we were unable to migrate the data in, we'll just say user PII field to the new data, to the new structure. We've made necessary changes to your structure, and the backup of your earlier data is stored at the, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that, nothing was lost, but I haven't gone back in to check when I unchecked it. Like, what happens when you uncheck a PII box?
You're not supposed to be able, on PII, you're not allowed to uncheck it. That's the big difference between encrypt and PII.
Okay, so, well, that's an interesting question, and I wonder what happened when I did that. Sorry.
No problem.
I got logged out. I'm having to log back in.
Yeah, the goal is, one of the things for PII is if you check it and save it, you're not allowed to uncheck it. Or if it allows you to, it shouldn't persist that change.
Well, I'm about to tell you if that's how it happened or not.
Now, when we first released this PII setting, there were some oddities where you could get into a weird state. It would actually enforce that change prior to saving it. Like it would enforce that restriction on checkbox selection, not on data type save. That was fixed a while back.
It let me uncheck it.
What version are you guys on, Ross?
I'm running, I think, 6.16.
Okay, who's on here that can follow up on that for me?
It
I'm here.
took away the encrypt data option when I unchecked it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at one that I had previously checked PII and then unchecked, I don't see all the same advanced selection options. Like I don't see encrypt data as an option, but contains PII is an option and it's unselected.
Yeah, let's follow up on that. You're not supposed to be able to unselect that. Otherwise, you could just unencrypt the data. So I'm gonna ask.
It will.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna ask Neil to follow up on that. Brandon, that's
Sure.
okay. I think Neil's has Ross's account.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Ross.
I was just saying, can someone let me know what you guys find out, or do I need to
Yeah,
send
no, I'm asking Neil to own following up with you about that. It'll take us a little bit of investigation to figure out that.
Yeah,
But
no.
my
that's
understanding is
fine.
you're not supposed to be able to deselect the PII
I mean,
property to select it.
I'm going to end up using the PGP module probably
Sure.
anyway. So, but still would like to know the answer to that.
Happy to follow back up.
I just don't think my users even want the keys on the same server as the encrypted data.
Yeah, I mean, with that requirement, the PGP module, I think, is the only current option you'd have.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Ross. And all right, so Chris, reused assignment, it seems to blur the difference between a process execution extension and a case entity. How different are they actually? You want to dive in a little bit on that for me, Chris, if you don't mind?
Well, I think what caught my eye is that you had introduced yesterday a way to reuse an assignment. And sort of you kind of constructed this circle where depending on the outcome of a secondary assignment, you could actually return to the first assignment and even reuse it. And I have to say that kind of surprised me because I was, and maybe I tend to conflate, and maybe part of my problem is I tend to conflate assignment with process execution extension because I kind of think of them as going together.
Which they do.
Even though they do, although I think someone might say technically you can do an assignment outside of one.
You can, yes, true. They're not required to go together, but they are sort of flatmates, I guess.
Right, and so I kind of think of the ideal process execution extension is this flow that doesn't really have these kinds of circles and backtracks and whatnot. And that when you're doing that, my understanding is that's telling you really should be using a case entity for what you're up to. And then I kind of look at this and go, well then doesn't that kind of mean I'm doing the same sort of thing as to why I use a case entity, or is this separation more artificial than anything else?
Yeah, I mean, functionally, the case, there's really only one difference between a flow execution extension and a case structure. Let me create one of each really quickly to have something to call out. This will be called case one with a single string property. And this is my flow execution extension. And then I'm going to create a case. There it is, case. So this is case two, same thing. Now these are quite interchangeable. Like you can use them, you really can use them interchangeably. I am more of an old school person, so I like flow execution extensions more. Though I know our services team leverages cases quite heavily in a lot of the work that they do. But like if we look at each of these configuration folders, and let me just duplicate myself. And I'm gonna, on one, I'll go into case one configuration, and on case, and then I'll go into case two configuration here. Now if we look at the tops here, they have most of the same properties. Case editor list, this is called state editor list, but the state editor and the case editor are almost equivalent. The primary difference is a case starts with some expected states, which is what started and completed are. And if we click into this and edit it, there's this property here to not close state. Sorry, let's try started. to have a create assignment, and this will generate an assignment in the folder automatically when this case moves into this state, so that I can add additional states here called, awaiting confirmation or something. And the old way of building this with a process folder is you'd have a flow and set state steps. And in here, in started, you'd probably have a flow with an assignment. And once the assignment is complete, you'd hit a set state step, right? And the set state steps value would be awaiting confirmation. And then it would move into this. And then if create assignment is created, it would assign an assignment to the appropriate user or group defined here. But you don't have much control over it. It's a very generic assignment. So what our PS team does is deselect this and then build flows. So they would come here and add an activity in a trigger flow, and this would be called, complete confirmation behavior or something, right? And when the case moves into this state, the complete confirmation flow will run. And so you can have these nice small discrete flows that do specific work. And at the end, they usually set a state, and then the case knows what state it, looks up its expected case state list out of that state string, and moves it into the appropriate state. And then the triggers on that new state fire off. But we can do the same thing with a process folder here. If we created like a started state, and then, a review, whatever I name that thing, review expense, or closed. And I think the difference is the only difference here is, oh no, it even has a create assignment. So they're actually interchangeable. It's how you design it, not how it can be used. That's the primary difference. What I thought I was going to see here, but have proven to not know anything, is I didn't think create assignment would exist on the flow execution extension and the case. It does. It exists on both of those.
Well, I've been noticing a blurring between folder extension and case.
Mm-hmm. Well, case is just a folder extension with a few extra properties, right? It is a folder extension.
Yeah, that's been my conclusion, is that the two are so close, it's actually hard to find daylight between them.
It is, yes.
And so then sort of like now, okay, process execution extension. It seems like, so with process execution extension, there's sort of, as you say, this old school idea of you have these special steps that let you do advancements of the state in a way that's not really available otherwise. But aside from maybe that, again, trying to find daylight is going to be tough.
Yeah, so I mean, you can, here's how we think about it internally, and admittedly we're not doing a good job of telling you this, but like folder extensions are we don't think about them as transactional data. So they're not like tickets, they're not cases, they're like for organizational pieces. Like, you might have flows, if it's a medical process, you might create a folder extension to be a hospital, so you can put other things inside the hospital, and the flow figures out what hospital it's relating to, and then it can pull in all this this configuration data, which are entities and other pieces from the folder extension at runtime. And so you can control the behavior of the flow by controlling the content of this hospital. So we think about folder extensions, and I'm admitting there's complete conceptual, like behavioral overlap between all these things, right? It's really about use. We think about folder extension as like the data, the configuration data, the hospital, while we think about cases or flow execution extensions as the transactional pieces. So the contrasting the hospital folder versus the emergency room visit, which is probably a case or a process folder. The way we differentiate cases and process folders is about how structured the data is. So cases are a lot of this stuff, because they're built from the same pieces, we've just bled into all the other types as well, because why not? I guess but cases are really, we think about as being used for unstructured processes. So if we think about like a police investigation where it's very unstructured, it can move back and forth between states, and we don't want to define that explicitly in the design of our flow with all sorts of outcome paths that loop back, which is probably where your question comes from. Where a process folder is a defined series of states. You know, it's a college application. You know the states it moves through. And so it's easier to build a, hopefully not large, but a larger flow that has all of the sort of logic inside of it. So that's kind of how we, or at least I, think about the difference between those three very similar data structures. I don't know if that helps you at all.
So it's sort of so far as how you might organize what you're doing is how you end up picking which flavor to work with. Not that a software developer couldn't contort one to behave like the other with enough thought and energy.
Yes. Yeah. You can really use these things in the exact same way, right? I mean, there's small things like a folder extension doesn't give you the sort of the workflow prefix or the case number prefix for free, so you'd have to code that yourself, right? You know, cases can show up in the folder tree, but the flow execution extensions can't. There's very small differences between them that often are not that meaningful. So it's really about use more than it is feature or functionality.
Well, use that informs this is an easier way to organize and present what I'm doing with, you know, either a collection of something, as you say, with a folder extension versus, you know, there's this rather sequential process that I just want to outline, and there's not a lot of interesting things going on, even if I can have a loop, which is what caught my eye and said, well, then what's the real difference? All right.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot there, but yeah, I'd say that's about, yeah. So it's really about use, design or use, not feature or capability.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help. All right, so other Chris here. I have a stored procedure in SQL that could have different columns in the output. Is there a way to show dynamic columns within decisions and not set them static in a report / data grid? You should be able to leverage dynamic data rows as the output type. Let's see here. Do I have a stored procedure that I can lean on? Probably not. So let's see. Stored proc and dynamic data. I'll use a query here, at first at least. Okay. So just as an example, so I'm gonna create a quick query. Now, when we handle queries or any type of connection, Decisions wants to know the data type. It wants to know the data type at runtime, or design time, excuse me, so that it knows what defined data object to create in our compiled code, and so you can use that. So let me quickly entity account, run a query here. And that's why if I look at the query editor here, I can see, if I scroll down here, the option is create type. And we can change this to data rows, but we don't need to do that yet. Let's go ahead and, well, maybe we do. Let's just see this first. Let me explore a bit here on the call. Query 1, I'm gonna leave it as create type and click OK and create this. And so here I'm going to create a flow and I'm going to call my query in that flow. So come to steps, integration, database, local connection, run query 1. And so if I look at the output options under query 1, under return data option, it's going to default to select type, and the output type is going to be the type that the backend generated for me automatically. But I should be able to swap this to data rows. Now I've got to do work to handle that dynamic data. So here before, like if I come back to select type and I look at data explorer, let me connect it so it shows up. I'll see query 1 result is dynamic data. That's not right. Let me save this and come back in 1 second. So data explorer. So yeah, query 1 result is a list of my data type here, which is what you don't want, because this could be a variable. This structure can be variable. So what you should be able to do is change the return data option from a selected type, say Decisions map the query return to the type I specify, to data rows. And then what you get are dynamic data rows. And these are completely ambiguous cells that you can access as a particular data type here. So if we look at this, and this is the first field, and then you'd have to build logic to handle, probably some casting, or whatever, maybe you check to see what type it is, and then map it. Let's assume there's a property you can look at. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Oh no, I was just following what you were doing.
Yeah, so I think our stored proc gives you the same option. If not, you could definitely call the stored proc from within a query step. I just don't know that I have any stored procs that return data. No, I don't want. Yeah, local connection procedure name is, here you go, get all folders for account, returns data. Okay, it returns this. Okay. Let's see. So let me go into my flow and find my get all folders for account stored procedure. So integration, database, local connection, and this will be execute DBO get all folders for account. Yeah, so return data option, data rows. I think this should do what you want. You just have to handle that return explicitly. You can't, like, you're gonna, you won't be able to. I mean, probably. I think ultimately what you want is maybe it can return differently, but you need to check that return and then map to your to a type. Ideally, there's only a few possible return configurations for this data set, and you'd still want to get it to really make it easy to use in the workflow engine. You still want to cast it back. You can just have that control using dynamic data rows should allow you to have the control of that in the mapping of the flow, as opposed to the constraint on the type. Instead of the step mapping itself, you can do all that data transformation in the workflow engine itself.
Awesome. Okay.
So I'd advise you look there. And if that doesn't work, let us know in support, and we'll help out more.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
that really
absolutely.
helped.
All right, so to Alex, wondering what the difference is between ShowFormStep and FormWrapperStep, and why I would use one or the other. They should be the same. I don't think there is any difference. So ShowForm, where do we get FormWrapper from, I wonder? I think they're the same. I don't know why we have different names for them. Let me just find a form. So this is a form I've already defined. If I look at step information, this is FormWrapper, and this is ShowForm. So ShowForm is a step that has not had a registration object selected. That's the only difference. So ShowForm is just a shortcut. So instead of having to leave the designer, create my form, come back into the flow designer, and drag my form over by going through forms interaction and finding it, ShowForm brings in a completely abstract form and then allows me to pick or create it from within the designer. It's really just think about it as a shortcut more than anything, but they are not different. A FormWrapperStep is a fully configured form step, and a ShowFormStep is a partially configured form step. To Timothy, I've got a rule set that doesn't seem to respect execution order. Any ideas? How are you specifying? Are you specifying it on the priority inside of the rule?
You go to manage, and there's a set execution order where you can number them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm setting them, I've tried several different ways, ascending, descending, but they don't see. It looks like it's executing in alphabetical order, how they're sitting inside the folder. I'm not really sure.
Let me really quickly get FlowSet module installed, and then see if I can, I have to restart really quickly, and let's see if we can't sort this out really quick. Excuse me, apologies.
Yeah, I've been scouring the docs. I wasn't able to ascertain any information on that.
server to restart here. All right, and I'll come into a folder and create a space here for me. So just create a rule designer folder here. In this designer folder, I will create a rule set. I'm going to create a standard rule set. And then I need to set up my rule set. So we're running short of time. I'll move probably faster than normal here. I want to set up rule set and declare a string, leave everything else the same, and then click save. Now I can add an evaluation rule here. And so here, I'm just going to write two super dumb rules really quick. So string starts with hello. Save and close this. And I'll add a rule. The string ends with, it's a string 1, and it will be ends with world. Then back out of my rule set here into my designer folder and create a flow so I can test my rule set really quick. So come under rules, find my run rule set step, and I will pick my rule set, which is rule set 1. And then on my string, go ahead and enter in hello world. And let me go ahead and debug this. Okay, so evaluation rule 1, then evaluation rule 2. So I'm going to leave that debugger open, come to rule set 1, change this back to list, and I'm going to edit this rule. And so if I come over here on the right-hand side under settings, there should be order. I'm going to set this to 1. So I'm going to set evaluation rule 1 to 1. I think these start at 0. If I come back and start a new session, I can get 2 to run before 1. So where is it? Can you guide me to where you were making the change at? Was it inside the rule like I just did or somewhere else? Oh, set execution order.
Set execution order. Yeah, that's exactly where. And it does seem to manipulate the order column that you're showing right there, the same as you did. You just did it the other way. But I'm not able to actually affect the change in the actual execution order. So I'm not sure. I've got a couple different configurations. I've got a data return. I'm not sure if that makes a difference. I wouldn't think it would, but
yeah, it should not matter at all.
I'm also outputting the true results only. So there's like a couple rules. I'm just interested in the true results. So those are some changes from your example here. But I mean, regardless, if I go into, I've got a unit test, and every time, or a set of unit tests, and every time I run, doesn't matter what the order is, it always seems to execute them in some other ordained order. So
you've got you have data return, right? I'll leave that as Boolean. What about rule set type?
It's instance. So you can scroll down. The only change I've got is go down, scroll down, output true list.
Okay.
And then and my unit test looks at the results of the true list.
Okay. Back to our flow here really quick. No, back here. So this outputs the true list. Doesn't this doesn't create a unique outcome path when it does that?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you've got it down there. If you look, click on the rule set, see the true results.
Oh, I see. Understood. Sorry, it's included in output data, not an outcome path. So it looks, the debugger tells me that it, but if we look at our output data, so if we have two pieces of outcome data. So here's all of our
Yeah,
flow
what's
set
interesting
results.
is I don't see it in the unit test. I don't see the true results, and maybe that's where there's the issue. I'm in the unit test. I'm referencing true results and looking at the first result.
Okay.
But it.
Is it possible that unit test is written incorrectly?
Explain when I run the unit test, so I don't see the true results as what's being output. I only see the flow result. It's hard. So it's hard for me to tell what's actually going on there.
Are you looking at it? Unfortunately, we can't on these lunch and learns. Can you hear me? Okay. Am I coming through, Sabrina?
Oh shoot! Sorry, my volume went all the way down. Hey, I'm sorry if you were talking, man. I missed it.
Oh no. Have you written a unit test rule, or are you looking at the output in the debugger? Like, what are you? You keep referring to a unit test?
Yeah. Can I share my screen? Is that a possibility?
You can't. No, not on these things.
Oh man. Yeah. So I mean, I've got the rule set up, just how I described it, and then I've directly on the rule set, I've got some unit tests.
Okay. Yep. So you're writing unit tests on the rule set itself.
Yeah.
Actually, wherever we go to do that at list, or is it
Yeah.
inside of here?
I just do it through debug right there. Go to debug and your debug at the top left.
Oh wow, yeah, there you go.
And then I have added unit tests directly to the rule set. And then before you save it, go edit the.
You want to evaluation rule, okay?
Yeah, and I've got it looking at true results. The first result in true results. Yeah.
And I'll say, is it name?
Data. Well, you've got it set to data return, so it'll be I
think this is a rule name, right? Yeah, let's see here really quick. Name, I'll say contains 2. Let's see what this does. So if I run this, unit test rule returns true. So if the true results first name contains 2, and it pulled in evaluation rule 2. So this still looks like it's executing.
Yeah,
right?
It still looks, and I don't see that behavior in mine. That's what's weird. Every time I run it, it runs according to some other order.
I think we'll probably need to explore this in more detail with you, Tim, since we're at the top of the hour. Brandon, would you submit a ticket on Tim's behalf?
I submitted one already. I just jumped on the QA session to see if I could get a quick answer. But
man, I was really hoping. Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, my example here is working like we expect, but it's different than what you're seeing. So it's either a version issue or there's some other configuration on your rule set that's causing an issue that's just hidden to us right now. So we'll need to explore that in more detail.
Hey, thanks for checking on it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Sorry we couldn't get a quick win here for you. That's really my hope for these things. So, all right, that's the end of the hour. Thanks everyone for your questions. Sabrina, somebody else is in tomorrow and then Thursday, right?
Yes.
It's okay if you don't know off the top of your head.
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Well, awesome. Thanks everyone for the time, and I will talk to you guys next week. But we have more of these Wednesday and Thursday. Thanks everyone. See ya.